What is up, in the loop fans? This is the Beard Man coming at you from America's Rock and Roller Coast, Cedar Point, where I'll be showing you all of the awesome coasters this park has to offer, starting of course with Gatekeeper, which is the park's wing coaster added back in 2013. It's a nice, long, smooth ride with lots of inversions, including these keyhole zero-G rolls over the front gate. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of the internet, I bring you the real reason to go to Cedar Point, Steel Vengeance, which is new for the park this year. It's the world's tallest, fastest, everythingest hybrid roller coaster, which means you got a nice, smooth steel track on wood supports of what used to be Mean Streak. One of the park's least popular rides is now Steel Vengeance, which is arguably the best roller coaster in the world. I think it's easily the best steel roller coaster in the world. Tons and tons and tons of extreme airtime throughout the entire ride. You're of course out of your seat more than you're in it. Definitely a destination ride. Definitely come to Cedar Point to ride this ride really as soon as you can, because it's fantastic, and because it is so fantastic, and because it's a new ride, and because they're still getting bugs worked out, this ride is subject to very, very long lines, historically long lines. So definitely if you come here, either get fast lane or run to it at early entry, so you can get right on, and hit it at the end of the night when the line is short, because you can get lines for this ride that are 3 hours or more, but don't wait in that. Don't wait in that. Get here early, stay late, ride Steel Vengeance. One of the most iconic roller coasters at Cedar Point is Millennium Force, of course. Built back in 2000, was the first roller coaster to go over 300 feet tall. The ride is still the park's signature attraction, at least it has been until Steel Vengeance. It's definitely a very fun ride. It goes over 90 miles an hour. More of a speed ride than anything else, and it keeps its speed very well throughout the entire ride. It's got a couple nice turns and airtime hills, but really the ride's all about speed from start to finish. Definitely an iconic ride and definitely an absolute must-do. Luckily for this year, with the opening of Steel Vengeance, this ride has actually seen shorter waits than it has in the past. If you do it during early entry, it's basically a walk-on. I also like to come back and do it towards the evening, after the lines of the afternoon have sort of died down, and you can usually get on this ride in about 30 minutes or so if you catch it at the right time. So Millennium Force, definitely a ride worth doing, definitely a ride worth re-riding if you can as well. one of my favorite rides here is Maverick, which is the park's Intamin multi-launching blitz coaster. A nice, tight, compact ride with lots of great elements. Super great airtime. And a really great launch. Definitely one of the best rides here. Also one that is very busy and definitely gets a long wait, and is also very temperamental. This ride tends to break down a lot throughout the day. So again, this is one you want to try to get on early entry if you can. But sometimes it's not open during early entry because sometimes it tends to open late. If that happens, I suggest you go over to ride Millennium Force, because you can see it from the top of Millennium Force, and you can kind of monitor it from there. But definitely a ride you want to hit early in the day, and then again at the end of the day. Definitely don't miss Maverick. One of the newest rides towering over the midway here at Cedar Point is Valravn. It's the park's B&M dive coaster. It's actually also the world's tallest dive coaster. It holds you here at the top before dropping you down a massive 220-foot 90-degree vertical straight down drop. It's got some unique elements on it. It's, I believe, the only dive coaster with a dive loop rather than an Immelman after the drop off the mid course. And of course, my favorite part of the ride is actually this roll right here, which you actually go through nice and slow, so if you're sitting on the end you get a lot of nice float and hang time. This ride was built just a couple years ago, so it's still new, and it's a very popular ride here at the park, so definitely if you want to ride Valravn, I suggest hitting it during early entry, or even better, hitting it towards the evening, or at the end of the day when the front of the park has cleared out. The tallest and fastest ride at Cedar Point is Top Thrill Dragster, which is an Intamin accelerator launch coaster with a hydraulic launch that launches riders up to, I believe it's 125 miles per hour. The nerds can correct me if I'm wrong on that. I'm not really sure. It's about 120 miles an hour, faster than you're going to go on most rides in the world. It's sort of a one-trick pony, but the trick is a good trick. Launches you out, takes you up a 420-foot tall tower, and takes you back down the tower. And across the finish line. Definitely a rush, definitely a must-do when you're here. A couple things to know. This is one of the most popular rides in the park, so it will pretty much always have a very long line, and it's not on early entry. So my suggestion is to come to this ride. If you're doing early entry, do early entry and then come straight to this ride right when the park opens. The other thing is this ride breaks down a lot. I have never been at Cedar Point a day when this ride hasn't gone down for at least a short period of time, but it usually goes down periodically throughout the day, and then it comes back up. So another tip is if you watch the ride throughout the day, it's in the middle of the park and it's super tall, so you can see it from pretty much anywhere in the park. Keep an eye on the ride throughout the day, and if you notice that it's not launching trains, it's probably down. And then keep an eye on it, and then once you notice it launching empty trains, immediately go straight to it, because if it's coming up after a long period of downtime, the wait will typically be pretty short then. But definitely, absolutely a must-do for anybody coming to Cedar Point. Back here by the resort gate and the water park is another historic Cedar Point classic, Magnum XL 200. This was the first hypercoaster in the world, the first coaster to go over 200 feet. It's got tons and tons of crazy ejector airtime, especially if you are sitting in row 3. Row 3 of the train and the back of the train are the places to sit on this ride. And yeah, it's a whole lot of fun. Definitely a little bit of a polarizing ride. It was built back in 1989, so it's not the smoothest ride, but definitely an absolute blast. And also a ride that tends to have a short line here. So it's a ride that you can do pretty much any time of the day, and really have no problem getting on it. This is Rue de Rue, which at the moment is down for mechanical issues. They got one train parked on the lift there. Rue de Rue is a floorless coaster. It used to be a stand-up coaster called Mantis, and now it is a floorless coaster, which basically it's the same ride as it was, but now you're sitting down instead of standing up. It's a fun ride. It's got a lot of inversions. Very intense, forceful ride. And definitely a lot of fun. You do get a little bit of headbanging in the second half, because it does rattle a bit. But if you're ready for it, you keep your head back, you actually can avoid that. This is another ride that typically doesn't have very long lines at several points throughout the day. So if you see it with a line, don't ride it, and wait and come back to it later, and chances are it will not have a line then. One of the park's most iconic rides is Corkscrew, which is, of course, an aero looper with the famous corkscrews over the midway. When it opened, it had the most inversions in the world with 3. It's got a loop and the 2 corkscrews here. And here we have another Cedar Point classic historic ride, Gemini, which is the park's racing coaster. It's kind of like a giant mine train. It's got steel track on wood supports. At the time, like many other rides here, it was the tallest and fastest roller coaster in the world when it was built. Definitely a super fun ride. It's actually got lots of airtime. And it's a great ride all around. And again, it's another one that doesn't ever have a very long line. So definitely one to check out any time of the day. You gotta love that retro station that Gemini has. And this year it's celebrating its 40th birthday. This loud green machine here at the front of the park is Raptor, the park's inverted roller coaster. One of the classics here. One of the classics here at Cedar Point, as it opened in the early 90s and really kind of put the park on the map. Really kind of boosted their attendance a lot since it was a hot new thing when it opened. Definitely a fun ride. Lots of nice forces and lots of inversions. Definitely a smooth ride. Definitely one to check out. And here we have Blue Streak, the park's wooden roller coaster. Currently the oldest operating roller coaster here at Cedar Point. It's a whole lot of fun. It's a nice out and back layout with a lot of airtime. Out over the lagoon in the middle of the park is Iron Dragon, which is one of the last remaining aero suspended coasters here. in the U.S. And it's definitely more of a family ride. It doesn't go super fast, but it's got these swinging cars that swing under the track, which adds some fun going around the turns. Definitely a good ride for you know, maybe a starter coaster here. Just a quick note about Iron Dragon: they are still running the VR experience, which runs from 6 to 10. They do close the ride at 5 to get ready for that. So if you want to ride Iron Dragon without the VR, make sure you get to it before 5. And if you want to ride with, do it from 6 to 10. Back in Camp Snoopy is the park's kiddie coaster called Wilderness Run. It used to be called Gemini Junior. This is one that you need a kid to ride. So if you are a super huge nerd and you're trying to get all the credits, this is one you're going to miss unless you have a kid. Back in Camp Snoopy, you will also find the Woodstock Express, which is another one of the kiddie coasters here at Cedar Point. But this one you can actually ride. You don't need a kid to ride this one. You can just come back here and ride it. Back in Frontier Town, you will find the Cedar Creek Mine Ride, which is, of course, a mine train roller coaster. It's a long ride. It's definitely one of the older rides here. Not super smooth, but also not super fast or super intense, so definitely a good ride for families to check out. Right along the lake here is the Wicked Twister, which is an inverted impulse coaster. Basically just launches you back and forth up these twisted spikes. A whole lot of fun. Typically the weight's not too bad, so it should be a ride that's easy to get on. Alright, and that does it for our look at the roller coasters of Cedar Point. Be sure to like and subscribe to In the Loop on YouTube for more theme park videos. Listen to the In the Loop podcast. And follow In the Loop on all social media. This is the Beard Man from Cedar Point for In the Loop. I'll see you guys next time.